right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. John Fuller is here. Today is Wednesday, March 26, 2014. March 26, 2014. I tell you the date so that you know if you're listening to a live show or not. If that's the same date as your calendar shows, then you are listening to a live show and you are invited to call and speak to John Fuller. He, of course, is the host of this show called Legally Yours. He's an attorney here in Ocala at the law firm of Fuller and Fuller. Janet Fuller is the other Fuller. That's his beautiful wife, and the two of them have been in practice for a long time here in Ocala, as we learned last week. Good morning, John. How you doing?
Good morning, Larry. How are you? And good morning to our listeners. And it looks like although it's officially spring, we still have a touch of winter out there in the weather today.
Yeah, just a touch, yeah.
I wondered if you had noticed that.
Yeah, I did. I wore my coat, which I didn't expect to have to do again this year.
It was a big difference walking the dog this morning compared to the last night. That's for sure. Well, apparently, from what I gather, a lot of our friends are going through spring break who have children in school. I've talked to a number of people, or actually I've not talked to a number of people because they're all out of town.
Okay. You've heard of a number of people.
That is the truth. So anyway, yes, it's a pleasure to be here. We have some wonderful listeners who are regulars, and then we welcome anyone who may be listening for the first time. The purpose of our show is to discuss the legal system, to discuss any particular legal problem or issue in general terms that someone may have, to share with them our view on how they should get the relief or help. And if it falls in an area of our practice, my wife Janet Fuller and I practice law at the law firm of Fuller and Fuller. We do litigation work and Social Security disability work. If you've been in an accident and are injured, have serious injuries, or a loved one or a friend or a family, those kind of cases, if you would call the office, we're certainly happy to set an appointment and deal with it because the details are so important. One of the big concepts that we talk about on this show and have repeated it frequently is that under the relatively new Florida personal injury protection law that's a little over a year old now, if you're in an accident, you must go see a doctor within 14 days, or you forfeit very valuable insurance rights that you've paid for.
Right.
And it has to be a medical doctor, a doctor of osteopathic medicine, a physician's assistant, or a registered nurse practitioner. You cannot qualify to get the coverage that you've paid for if you go to a chiropractor first, or to a massage therapist first, or to an acupuncturist first, or to a naturopath or a nutritional specialist. You have to go to one of those four medical doctors who need to examine you and determine if you have a significant medical event. And that's very subjective. And if you go to an emergency room are very busy. They triage people in and out, and you may have very limited time with the medical doctor who would be seeing you. You need to be a very good historian in telling them what your signs and symptoms are and the severity of the impact, or how you fell, or where you landed. I was reminded just recently that it's not always the force of the blow or the impact. It's the dynamics of the physics. If you are merging from off the exit ramp on an interstate, and your body is turned and your neck is turned and you are hit, it takes much less force to injure your spine when it is torqued in one direction than if you're sitting straight.
Right. I know
so, these are things that we probably all knew intuitively if we thought about it.
Yes, yeah.
But if you're dealing, remember, the professional who's representing the insurance company, their interest is in protecting as many of the assets and resources of that company as they can. So if you have a low impact collision where the car that hit you from behind wasn't isn't going that fast, or the damage to the car doesn't appear that great. It may or may not be relevant as to where you were in the angle of the impact, as to how it causally relates to your injury. Because in order to recover, you have to have a permanent impairment, but you have to prove by the greater weight of the evidence that the other driver was at fault. Then you have to prove that the negligence or at fault part of what the person did or did not do that he should have done was the causation of the injury. And then you have to suffer an injury and resulting damages. And you have to have 4 out of 4 of those elements in order to have a case. So if anyone is in question of this, go to a doctor quickly, be thorough in the way you describe your injuries and how the accident occurred, because all of that is very, very important by the time you see someone in our office or your family attorney or whomever. So.
You know why I don't like the fact that they took chiropractors off of that list is because of my accident. When I had my accident, I went to the emergency room. They pretty much said, you're fine. My lower legs were bruised. They could see that. And I went home. And then when I would be driving and when I would look over my shoulder to make sure that I could merge or whatever, it was stiff. My neck hurt. And I heard something. I could hear something in my neck. And so I went, and I think I waited more than 14 days.
Well, that was probably before the new law went into effect.
Oh, it was years ago. Yeah. But it was, and if I can mention Dr. Vicori's name, it was Dr. Vicori who figured out that I really had something going on. Yes. That's why I don't understand why they don't let you go to
We work frequently with Dr. Ficuri and with his office because they are treating people whom we represent. And they are very thorough, and he doesn't need a public endorsement from me. And I know he's had his own show here with you for a number of years. But it is important to follow up on the details. And when you stop and think about it, I don't know. I could speculate all day long, and I have my own feelings on why the governor and the legislature did what they did. But when you see doctors, what of the medical professions actually puts their hands on the patient now and feels and rotates and manipulates? It's a lot less now than it was 50 years ago. And I'm not saying that's bad medicine, because we have x-rays and CT scans and MRIs and that sort of stuff. But a chiropractic physician has a place in the treatment of trauma. That's my opinion, lay opinion, I would say.
And mine too.
But that's up to each individual person. Getting medical care is a very personal thing. The important thing is that you need to have appropriate screening after an accident done in a timely manner.
And just to be clear on this, so if I go to a normal, that's a wrong word, but I'll just use it, a normal doctor first, abide by the law, can I then go to a chiropractor?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, as long as the one that you see first is the medical doctor.
Okay, and you have a phone call, so let's jump to the phone.
I'm good. Sorry to be distracted, but I'm just trying to stay current. We live in the technology age, and I wonder if any of our listeners experience an increase of waste of time sorting through junk email each day. I don't want to get started on that. Okay, we've got a caller.
Yes, sir. Good morning. You're on the air with John.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Hey, how are you today?
Oh, wonderful! It's a great program, and it's always nice for me to call in and you answered my questions so wonderfully, and I really look forward to this program, and it kind of makes my day on Wednesday.
Well, thank you. That's kind of you to say, and if I remember correctly, you are kind of on the mend, recovering from some challenges I think you said you had. So I hope your recovery is still going well.
Okay, thanks. The question is, if you're a person that moves down to the Ocala area from out of state, and you have no friends or relatives or anybody down here, naturally you're going to find a doctor right away, and you're going to dentist and so on and so forth. Would it be advisable, and would it be a good idea to set up a business relationship with a lawyer, introduce yourself. And not that you would need a lawyer right away, but in the case of an emergency like a car accident or whatever, so rather than picking out a lawyer out of the blue in the middle of a critical situation, here you've got an established situation and you know where to go.
Well, that's an interesting question. I must tell you, I think you're quite analytical in thinking in those terms. I don't think the majority of people do, and I've not ever actually had anybody call in that regard. I certainly don't think it would hurt. Picking a lawyer or any professional is a very personal act. There are many fine professionals, and sometimes they're just not the right personality fit for the other person. In the practice of law, like practice of medicine, it has gotten very specialized, and so it is, it's not necessarily being able to find one lawyer who can fit all purposes. I'm very conscious about referring prospective clients who come to me with problems that involve other legal areas than those I practice regularly in. But most every lawyer, even those of us who are board certified in multiple different boards by the Florida Bar and the American Board of Trial Advocates, you can certainly speak to a lawyer. Most initial consultations, or a lot of initial consultations, are either free, especially if it's in an injury case, or if it's about some other specific matter, then, the consultation fee is usually relatively modest. The one thing I would say is that when people move down, the question I have asked a lot is, do we need a new will? And the answer is, I think someone should periodically have their estate plan reviewed by a lawyer who specializes in that area. And we don't do that in our practice, but when people call me, if there is a significant event in your life, such as retirement, divorce, loss of a loved one, significant financial changes, or just the passage of time. Children have grown up. They're no longer minors. Guardianships may not be appropriate anymore. And so a good place to start, probably, if you're a new resident, is with someone who does a kind of a general practice. Certainly, we welcome anybody listening to this program who has a legal question. We're happy to talk with you. I tell people that I'm real good at knowing what I'm not good at. and so if someone calls and it's out of my area of expertise, I will usually give that individual, if they want me to, the names of 3 practitioners in the area of law where they may have a specific need. And then if you are injured, if you have a litigation question, if it's a contract dispute, if it's a commercial dispute, if you work for a company or a corporation and you own stock in it and there's a dissolution of the company, those kind of things where there is some degree of antagonistic or at least potentially adversarial relationships, then I think you need to see a trial lawyer. Certainly if you've been injured in a slip and fall or trip and fall, premises liability. I have a case where I was talking to some people recently, and they were seriously injured in the parking lot of a big box store. It's out of town, out of Marion County, has nothing to do with anything locally, and they had no security in the parking lot. They had very dim lighting. And these people were mugged, and they were elderly, and they were seriously hurt, and they were robbed. And there was no law enforcement, there was no security. They were just out there on their own. Ironically, this particular commercial establishment had a half a dozen security people inside to protect them against potential retail theft and shoplifting, but they had nobody to patrol the parking lot to make certain that on a dark night when your car parked a long way from the entrance, that you're not the potential mugger. Those kind of things give rise to what is called premises liability. If you're the owner of the premises, you have a duty to, and especially if you're a commercial premises where you are inviting people to come in and spend their money in your place. And so that's the kind of thing that you need a trial lawyer for.
Yeah. Would it be acceptable to you for like a person like myself, let's say, to stop by the office, get your business card, have it in my wallet, I get in an accident, you're not supposed to reveal a lot of information, but only what's required, and to be able to contact you right away to take the case further on?
Well, of course, and if you want to, I don't always. I'm not able to see people who just drop in because trial lawyers spend most of their time in depositions, in courtroom, in hearings. But certainly to come by, pick up some brochures about our training, education, background, our cards. We'd be happy for you to have that, and I would be happy to meet you. And if you have generic or general questions, or it's something that's more specific than we talk about on this program, call, make an appointment, and be happy to do that.
Sounds very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
I do like his idea, though. I mean, that sounds like a really good idea.
That's really that's one of the things that I am always impressed with this show, by what wonderful listeners who take the time to call. The questions that we have received over the last almost 2 years or however long it's been, the issues that they spot in the system are very, very spot on, in my opinion, and that's what makes the show. Let's take another call.
Yes, sir. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, gentlemen. You and Larry make the show. Come on, really?
Well, thank you. Larry's the professional over there. He's not only a delight to visit with as we do each Wednesday morning, but he's operating enough electronic equipment to send a man to the moon.
There you go. Hey, just to tag on to what Hugh was asking, it's like not too many years ago, there was this big push for prepaid law. You prepaid your law and stuff, and I haven't heard much of that lately. That's not really my question, but I was just going to tag on to Hugh's comment. My question has to do with the municipality. I have a huge oak tree that's in my yard, but it's on the city of Ocala's right-of-way. And I had a tree person come out and inspect it. They said, no, it needs to be either taken down or trimmed back severely. I called the city. They sent their trees person out. They said, no, there's nothing to worry about. So now that we've established that I've recognized the problem, the city says there is no problem. If the tree crushes my house now, where's this going to go is my question.
Okay. We've had that question frequently, and I like it when people ask, and we get to talk about things more than one time, because Larry made a very good point last week that we don't have everybody listening for every program when every question comes up. So we're glad to address these things, and this is a question that comes up frequently, and the short answer is that if the tree is entirely on the other property owner's property, and it looks entirely healthy. There's no sign of decay, disease, there's been struck by lightning or anything like that, and the tree falls on your property, they're not responsible to you. Only the other tree owner, property owner who has the tree on it, they're only responsible if the tree is obviously decayed or unhealthy or at risk. Now, having said that, you have your own legal right that to the property line of your property, you have the legal right to have a tree surgeon come there. You would have to do it at your expense and trim every branch from the ground to the sky off of your property. And if that tree, when you finish doing that, looks like it has a bad haircut, that's just too bad, because you have the right to cut back all of the overhanging branches that overhang your property line back to the property line. That's your right. And if the tree is healthy, appearing, it doesn't have any decay or any other evidence of a split or something that a person would reasonably be on notice that this tree has been weakened out of its normal healthy state, and we have a hurricane or a tropical storm and that tree is blown down on your property, the other property owner has no liability. If the tree looks decayed, if it looks like it's dying, if it's been struck by lightning, if it has a split in it or a hollowed out area that you can see, and it is something that is apparent that a reasonable person should see this tree is not healthy and is not structurally sound, then if it falls on your property and causes damage, then the adjacent property owner can be held liable.
Good answer, John. I will petition the city to come back out, inspect it again. Huge branches with holes in them.
Now, one of the things that I've seen happen, just having lived in Florida all my life, we have these beautiful live oaks. Many of them are just huge, and they look absolutely, completely intact. But you drill into that tree, and you will find after 6 or 8 inches that it's completely hollow inside. And I'm sure after storms, if you ride around and you see some of these granddaddy oaks that have blown over, you would be shocked to see a tree that looked massive and invincible, if you will, that the whole center part of it was empty.
Yeah.
And I'm no arborist or horticulturist or that sort of thing, but that's just an observation.
Good deal, John. I'll see if I can get the city to send their contractor back out to where I can show them the branches that are really bad shape.
Right. If they're branches that are in bad shape, then the liability shifts to the tree owner.
Well, city owns it.
Well, there you go. Well, good luck.
Wow, yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
That's terrible when two experts are disagreeing. All right, let's go back to the phone. You have another call. Good morning. You're on there with John Fuller.
Yes, I have a question regarding just the last call. I'm following a little bit there. If the neighbor has cut the branches in the tree in such a way that it has weakened this tree and is about to, it's just totally starving it to death. So now I have a stump basically there because most of it hung over the fence line, and he bushed through it and, basically made it unhealthy. So one of these is probably going to fall on his and the other guy's property line.
Well,
Why should I be responsible since he kind of is the one who, basically killed it slowly, starved it?
Well, you would have to look at each case on its facts. But what I was talking about was trimming limbs that extend over your property line. You have a right to cut those limbs back. Now, if the tree is partially on your property line and partially on the other property line, and you go in there and cut into the trunk of the tree so that you structurally damage the tree and weaken the tree, you'd be very hard pressed to have a very strong case that if the tree fell down, it was their fault.
The tree is totally on my property in this case, but it does lean over. I mean, just one of those trees grew a bit of an angle, and so the mound was all over the other person's property, which they took the right to,
well, the measure of this is
I'm probably going to die.
Yeah, the measure is what is the appearance of the tree to a reasonable man. You don't have a duty to go out and hire an arborist or a horticulturist to come and do a analytical tap or drill on every tree on your property line. It's what is reasonable to a reasonably prudent person. It has to be an obvious defect. No property owner has the duty for every tree that is on his property but is adjacent to his neighbors to go out and hire someone to come in and do a thorough arborist or horticultural examination of the tree. That's just not a duty that the law places on you. However, if you do inspect it, and if you do find that it has been internally weakened because of some non-obvious decay, then once you are on notice of the condition, your duty may change.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for calling.
Sure. Thank you.
John, we went quick today.
Well, I may have been 2 minutes late. I had a phone call I was taking, and I apologize if I was tardy, but it's always a pleasure, and I thank our viewers, our listeners, for calling in.
And if we need an attorney and you are our choice, how do we get a hold of you?
Our office in Ocala, the telephone number is 352-547-4292. We have a toll-free number, 855-534-2565, and we have offices here in Ocala and in the villages. And so if someone has an accident or an injury or knows of someone and would like to refer them to us, call, and we'll be happy to schedule an appointment.
Excellent. And for the listeners, you can call us if you didn't get that number. We do have it written down. We'll be glad to tell you the number to John Fuller over the phone. Thank you, John, as always.
Thank you again, Larry.
We'll be right back.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
ABC News Now, I'm Daniela Bellotta. Nissan is recalling just over 1 million cars, SUVs, and vans because the front passenger airbags may